Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called Phone Numbers. Several years ago, my friend, let's call him Mark, started a home-based computer repair and software business. He and his wife had lived in their home for about 10 years and had a well-established landline phone number, which was essential back then, since most people still used landlines over cell phones. Mark worked from 2 PM to 10 PM, the same shift as his wife, so he could help customers in the evenings, once they were done with their own workdays. Most computer jobs had to be done in person at the time, so clients would drop off their devices after work and pick them up the next morning from his back porch. Everything went smoothly, until a new doctor opened a practice in town. The issue was that the doctor's office phone number was just one digit off from Mark's. Mark's number had a 3, where the doctor's had an 8, so misdials were common. At first, Mark would simply redirect the occasional call, but as the doctor's practice grew and more hospitals began referring patients, the calls increased dramatically. Day and night, including weekends and holidays. Many of these were urgent or after-hours calls routed through an answering service. Mark ended up having to unplug his phone just to sleep or eat lunch in peace. And with 3 teenage daughters out and about, not having a working phone wasn't ideal. Mark eventually called the doctor's office and politely asked if they'd consider changing their number, since his had been in use longer. The response? A polite but firm no. The doctor explained that updating all of their materials, stationery, business cards, signage and notifying registries would be too costly and complicated. He ended with, "Just do the best you can. I'm sure the calls will stop soon." Mark replied, "Alright then, I'll do my best to take care of things." And he did. From then on, Mark took every misdialed call and handled them as if he were the doctor's office. Sniffles after yard work? Better come in right away. Coughing every time you smoke? Yep, we'll get you checked out. 98.9 degrees? Sounds just a little high. How about this afternoon? 5 kids needing school shorts? We can take them all at once. He made sure every caller felt heard, welcomed and promptly scheduled. He even booked multiple checkups for the same Friday at 4:30 PM. That following Monday morning, the doctor called Mark personally and asked, very kindly, if he could please stop making appointments. Mark replied, "I will if you will." By the end of that week, the doctor's office had a brand new phone number. The next story is called The Entire Team. At one of my previous jobs, my manager introduced a new rule out of the blue. All updates must be CC'd to the entire team. No exceptions. There wasn't much explanation. Just something about improving visibility and keeping everyone informed. Alright then. So I followed the rule exactly as it was written. I started CCing the whole team on everything. Stepping away to use the restroom. Back from the restroom. Refilling my water bottle. Currently at my desk, thinking. Logging off to sneeze. Will update shortly. After about 3 days of this, someone finally replied, asking, "Is this really necessary?" I simply forwarded the original message from our manager and replied, "Just keeping everyone in the loop." By the end of the week, that rule quietly disappeared. The third story is called Don't Touch It. Back in the early 2000s, I worked as a concrete mixer driver, specifically driving a front discharge mixer. Unlike rear mixers, front mixers allow the driver to control the pour directly from the cab, start and stop the flow, control direction and even move the chute hydraulically. You also sit higher, so you get a great view of the job site. They are preferred because they require fewer crew members during a pour. Concrete is batched at the plant and loaded into the truck right away. As it sits, it starts to heat up and harden. To keep it workable, you can slow the barrel's rotation to reduce friction and occasionally add water. Even then, concrete should ideally be poured within an hour of being batched. One day I finished that job and had about 4 cubic yards left. Usually I take it back and pour it into forms for concrete blocks. but dispatch let me know there was a contractor nearby who needed a bit more concrete to finish our basement floor. Win-win, he gets a discount and I don't have to haul the leftovers back. I arrived, checked the load and added some water to loosen it up. By this time, the concrete was already 2 hours old and heating up fast, so I needed to stop periodically to add more water and keep it flowing properly. The contractor wasn't happy about the stops. He came over and, rather forcefully, told me to open the water valve going to the barrel and leave it open. He said he'd control the water himself from the main valve outside the truck. So I followed his instructions exactly. I opened the valve and didn't touch it again. A couple more times he came over and added water himself. As they were finishing up, some of the crew grabbed my hose to start washing tools and opened the main water valve. The problem? That valve also sends water to the barrel, and since I had been told not to touch the valve to the barrel, I didn't. So about 70 gallons of water flowed straight into the barrel and right down into the freshly poured basement. The contractor came out of the basement clearly upset and asked, "What is your problem?" I calmly replied, "I don't have a problem. The problem is that you thought you could do both your job and mine. And it turns out you can't. Now you have a problem." As I finished cleaning the truck, I could hear him calling every number he could find for my company to file a complaint. When I got back to the yard, my plant manager asked me what happened. I told him everything. And it turns out the company had already had a few issues with that contractor. I never heard another word about it, and I never saw that contractor again. The last story is called Off the Leash. I live next to a 4-quadrant park, basically 4 green spaces divided by intersecting streets. Each quadrant is about 1 city block in size. One of those quadrants is fenced in and may or may not belong to the local school district. There's been some back and forth over the years about ownership due to some questionable dealings. What's important is that the neighborhood has been trying to gain regular access to this park for as long as I can remember. Recently, that particular quadrant was fully renovated using public funds. During the school day, it's used as a space for students, so it has some decent security features. There are 4 gates, one at each corner, and the agreement with the community was that outside of school hours, after 3 PM on weekdays plus weekends, the gates would be unlocked and the public could use the space. Now, here's where things get interesting. When it reopened, people, myself included, started letting their dogs run around in the park. It was a perfect setup. Fully fenced in, soft grass, lots of room. In hindsight, I'll admit this wasn't the best idea. When some residents started complaining, my wife and I stopped letting our dog in, but others didn't. The city was in a tricky spot. They couldn't just lock the park and go back on the public access agreement, but they also needed to discourage off-leash dogs. And honestly, I think their solution was brilliantly simple. Instead of locking the gates closed, they padlocked them open during public hours. So now, while the park is still accessible, there are 4 wide open access into nearby busy streets. If your dog isn't exceptionally well trained, you are probably not going to risk letting them run off leash anymore. I still see the occasional very well behaved dog in there, but for the most part, problem solved. Without signs, confrontation, or locking people out. Sometimes the simplest ideas really are the smartest. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.